Welcome to another edition of Unplug It. Next stop is September. Obviously, we knew we were headed for the finals last week, but it does automatically feel realer once you have an opponent locked in place and you walk outside, you smell that sort of spring air, which smells like finals, and you know that you are a part of it, and it gets you a little bit excited. You've got the week off to sort of dwell over that a little bit, but certainly plenty of football to talk about. And as we said, very different to the last finals experience. We were doing this podcast in 2020. We were all in isolation. We had to watch matches on our own effectively. There was no chance that you could go along and see a final. You were playing at the Gabba and then Metricon. And that was a special moment given it was 9 years in the making. But to be at the MCG in front of 50, 60,000 people potentially certainly does feel not just closer to home, literally, but certainly closer to that level of reality. And Aaron, as I welcome you in, first of all, obviously we'll review the Brisbane game a little bit later on, but the Giants, it looked like for most of Sunday that we'd probably play Sydney, but GWS is the eventual opponent.
Yeah, it was a bit of a roller coaster. I mean, actually, it started the week before as we're talking at the Essendon, just not even turning up in Sydney, and going from the whole, we did it enough kind of to not throw us straight out, and then Melbourne getting up and going fantastic, and then riding the roller coaster right at the end of GWS, or actually Carlton, almost doing their best impersonation of Essendon and just vanishing from the field at half time. And it's good that they, 2 goals in the last ever how many minutes it was that actually gave us that position. As I said, we did enough, but I don't think we've ever cheered home that many goals from other teams during a weekend. It was just, roller coaster of emotions, and jumping on Melbourne, great, fantastic, they've won. Great, okay, next game. Go through to Sunday. Last thing you want to do is be barracking for Carlton, and it felt dirty, but they got us there in the end.
It was funny, all of the texts that were flying around between me and a few other Saints fans with all these expletives about Carlton when they were 45 points down, thinking you bastards have rolled over. And then out of nowhere, when we actually lost 6 spot briefly, I couldn't see any conceivable way or reason why Carlton would score again. They had nothing to play for, but look, thank you to them, and the only time we'll ever say that, but they actually dug in and rallied in the last 5 minutes for seemingly no reason at all, and were able to get us that home final back. And Nick, it was it's a dirty feeling barracking for Carlton, but they did the right thing. I mean, it looked no chance, but good on them.
For most of the night, I was at a whiskey night, so I was watching the scores in the live ladder on my phone, having a few drams, but watching that live ladder and seeing the percentage tick up and up and up for GWS, it just felt inevitable that they were gonna take over. And when they did, it was like, well, how much by? Like they could win by 6 goals now. When they finally hit that point, it looked like they were just running over the top of them. And Carlton had nothing to play for. Like, for what it's worth, they had absolutely nothing to play for. And you almost, as much as you hate to say it, you almost couldn't begrudge them for playing like that, because I would have hoped that we would have done something similar, make sure that we get through the last game unscathed and nobody gets hurt and fit and healthy and get ready for a fortnight's time. But for some reason, like you said, Parko, they just rallied and kicked those couple that we needed right at the end and got us our home final.
I was going to say, Nick went from sipping the whiskey to shooting it. It was, I reckon that would have been.
It was funny. It got to that point where almost everyone at the table, like there was 20 people there, everyone at the table was on their phone, like just watching that last minute or a couple of minutes and watching the ladder and see how it moved. It was quite amazing.
And I guess just before we welcome our special guest, and as I said, we'll review that Brisbane game a little bit later, and not in huge detail, because in the end it didn't matter greatly, but what we take from it, and then we'll preview the Giants game next week, obviously as we draw closer to that and we learn a little bit more about selection. But there was all that debate over the weekend about where the final would be played. It seemed pretty likely that it was going to be the MCG right from the word go. And personally, I love that. Now, I know Marvel's our home ground, and yes, we might be sitting there thinking the Giants just smoked Carlton there, and therefore they would be harder to beat at Marvel. But I don't know, it's more the romantic side of things. The MCG feels like finals. I don't know, if you play a final at Marvel, it's almost like half a final, if that makes sense. It's like a big home and away game with a national anthem and that type of thing. But the idea of dreaming of going to finals, you sit at the MCG in September amongst your supporter base, and that is what a final is. So, yeah, I'm 1,000% all on board. I think we played the ground pretty well, but it had to be the G.
100%. I mean, if you want to win a flag, you got to win games. You got to win finals at the G. Like it's as simple as that. And the reality is, we're going to get a pretty decent crowd. I know people have been worried that we're only going to get 35,000 or 40,000. There's going to be 60, 65, 70,000 people there. And that can only be a good thing for us. I think you're right. We do play well at the G. We're a hard-running team. We like the space. We like to use the wings. I think it suits us, and we play well there. So I'm all for it, playing at the G. H?
Yeah, I'm happy to be there. I was just saying, September football's played there. So, yeah, I felt all along that's what would be happening. I was going to be quite surprised if we did end up at Marvel. It's just not on their radar. And I think they straight away said, no, there's more people that want to go there than we'll fit in anyway. So, yeah, it's from what I'm hearing, the numbers are pretty good already. So, yeah, it's probably the right decision in the end.
Yeah, 100% non-negotiable for mine that it would be at the MCG. I mean, there are certain circumstances where I wouldn't mind a final at Marvel, but I'm all on board this one at the MCG. Well, it is positive times and times for passion, and our next guest is Matt Stewart, comedian, podcaster, host of The Beer Pioneer, which already I think would prick the ears of plenty on the SBS, and director of Good Tucker, also on SBS, but most significantly a 30-year Saints member. So very much one of us. You can head to mattstewartcomedy.com. And Matt, thanks for joining us in this pre-finals bye week.
What an honour to be here. Can't believe it. I mean, so this is like, I do lots of podcasts, but I don't listen to that many. This is one I listen to every week. It's since finding you, it's been such a pleasure to have a football podcast I can listen to after a loss. I used to find footy media very difficult after a loss because, you know, you'd either be ridiculed or irrelevant or not even spoken about hardly. But yeah, it's so nice to find a place where you can. It just feels like you're listening to friends talk about what you've gone through as well.
To be honest, that was part of the motivation. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was going to say we've been told that listening to the show, and I think for us, kind of doing the show is a bit of that kind of weekly therapy session. And when you deal with as many losses as we have and we do, you kind of need that every week. So it has been, I think, a benefit to everybody.
Yeah. And it'd be a different show if we recorded a Monday compared to a Wednesday or Sunday as well, though. That's
yeah.
Yeah,
I want to hear some just straight after the game, 2 episodes a week. I've pitched this to Nick. He's like, we're working hard enough as it is, but I'm thinking maybe 7 a week. We just, check in.
The uncensored.
Every day there's news.
The uncensored, unfiltered version.
How you feeling this morning?
On a Sunday night.
Yeah.
And to be honest, that was when I was putting it all, when I was sort of talking to the guys about it and we were putting it all together. It was a little bit of that. I mean, I work in the football media a bit, but there is that massive knee-jerk reaction element of, you win 3 in a row, you're going to win the flag, you lose your next 2, you're the worst team in history, and it gets tedious.
Carlton areas.
Yeah, exactly. It gets tedious listening to that all the time, and it can be absolute total saturation and paralysis by analysis and all of that sort of stuff. So it's almost like, well, if you get an area for like-minded Saints fans to talk, that's generally I think the safest place for those who want to avoid all of that other stuff. But in terms of your background, I've always wanted to ask this question of comedians. It's probably a very stupid one, but at what point, obviously when you're growing up, you realise that you're funny and you can make people laugh, but where does that translate into, I think I can actually take this to a point where this can become a living, I can dedicate myself to this, and I can actually go somewhere with this as a career? How does it get to, I guess, that point?
It took me ages to have any sort of confidence in that way, and I put that down to my Saints relationship. Like, what right do I have? There's I think Hawthorn supporters around our age, they're like, yeah, of course I should do the thing that I want to do. But Saints supporters are like, oh no, I don't know. I don't think this is for me.
You're not worthy.
I was 29 before I did a gig at all. And I'm 39 now, so I've been doing it for 10 years. And it took, I wanted to do it from mid-20s, but yeah, I grew up in Moorabbin, so I don't think there were many people around Moorabbin thinking, I'm going to get into entertainment. I don't know why, but I don't remember anyone talking about it as an option.
Moorabbin, the Broadway of Melbourne.
Well, that's true. I haven't. Yeah, La La Land down there.
So, I mean, you talk about growing up in Moorabbin, but is that how you became a St Kilda supporter, just living in the area?
Basically, yeah. I actually, you're going to hate this. I know how you all feel about Carlton, but I was born a Carlton supporter. I come from a split family, divided family, and my mum and her side of the family is Carlton. Her parents, were from Carlton, and my dad's side of the family from Moorabbin, the Saints fans. And my parents are teachers, so we lived in the country for the first 5 odd years of my life. And I guess at a safe distance from the Stewarts, my quite large St Kilda supporting family, and they weren't able to get me in. So mum had her way. I was a Carlton guy. Stephen Kernan's number 4 on my back. And then in 89, we moved to Moorabbin. And my Uncle John took me from, there was a bit of a housewarming. My Uncle John took me to the front room away from everyone else, sat me down, and he said, "All right, Matt, you go for the Saints now." And I said, "Okay, John."
And fair enough.
It'd be the transformation that we would be very much approved by most people, I'd say. So it's
that's true, but I mean, at the time, it seems like child abuse. Making the Blues were flying at that point, and he's switched me to the cellar dwellers. But no regrets. Since then, it's been pretty even, I would say. Oh, actually, probably we've had the better of it apart from 95.
Yeah, we've owned them. Yeah,
I don't think you're alone actually, because I think your family was half Collingwood or somewhat Collingwood.
Yeah,
my family was half Hawthorn.
Collingwood, yep.
So yeah, my family was half Hawthorn, and some decisions had to be made when we were young.
And I think Darren had a split from Geelong or something. I think.
Yeah, so my mum's side were all Sydney, but she'd sort of migrated across to St Kilda. But yeah, I barracked for Geelong for a few months in primary school. And Dad similar, he sat me down saying, "Well, you can barrack for them if you want, but you'll never go to a game because I'm only going to watch the Saints. So you can come with me to those ones, but I'm not taking you to a Geelong game." And I'm like, fair enough. So that's sort of how it came to be.
Jeez, he's deprived you of a bit of joy, hasn't he? But oh well.
Yeah.
But I think apparently, looking back, I didn't realise how nice my mum was about it, because she's probably more than my dad. She's the madder footy fan of the 6 of us. Me and my 3 siblings with 2 parents. Me and mum are the 2 who still properly give a shit and bleed when we win or lose. But apparently she's told me about it since, that it was the most heartbreaking moment when she unpicked the stitches of the number 4 off the Carlton jumper and put it onto the Saints jumper. So I went from sticks to plugger in an off season, and which isn't a bad move,
Yeah,
but
there's a good number there.
Yeah, she still talks about it like it was one of the saddest moments of her life.
With all due respect to sticks, pluggers drop punts if goal spun properly, at least. So
Yeah.
that was always something.
So being a comedian, a lot of comedians or entertainers, they have in their kit bag the whole impersonation thing at times. Have you tried to bring out the Ross or anyone at any stage for anything? Or
I reckon I'd be probably about as on this show, H, I relate to you the most, and I don't think of you as the man of 1,000 voices. Maybe I'm wrong. No, I wish. No, I can. No, I mean, Ross isn't that far off. He's sort of another dopey sort of deep voice, but I do talk about the Saints a bit on stage, though. Most festival shows will have at least one Saints-related anecdote. Probably the one that got the most legs was when the story of 2010. I talk about how I was there in 97. I was there in 09, heartbroken, So leaving the ground after 09, I said to myself, I got to take out emotional insurance if we ever make it in. I can't take it. My heart can't take it. And then obviously didn't have to wait that long. The very next year we were there and I took out emotional insurance, and this is what I did. I put $1,000, biggest bet I'd ever made, and I put it on the opposition, which I'd never normally do. But I saw this going one of two ways. Either the Saints won and I'd be happy, or Collingwood would win and I'd win a lot of money, which is like a form of happiness. The only way my plan could have come unstuck is if it was a draw. And as you three well know, yes, it was in fact a draw. And I somehow figured out a way of being a loser twice in the one grand final.
It must be
brutal.
It must be a source of comfort to know that you've always got some sort of tragic story to relate back to in terms of your shows or whatever, that there's always a St Kilda story you can fall back on in case things aren't going so well on stage.
And I've got friends who are like that with, I mean, they don't have a football team like me to always fall back on. They'll be like, oh, so great, I got robbed this week. I reckon I'll be able to turn that into 20 minutes on stage, something like that. So yeah, it's trickier in these, these finals years. What do I talk about?
Well, maybe that's the tragedy. Maybe that's when you go up on stage and say, I had this whole set prepared of St Kilda tragic stories, but we're playing finals, so I'm just going to stand here and look at you for the next half an hour.
Yeah, I'm actually feeling pretty good about myself.
It's remarkable. One of the most St Kilda things would have been, and it didn't occur, would have been that Adelaide-Sydney stuff-up was going to cost us a trip interstate, but it didn't eventuate. But it's very typical of us to have been the innocent victim of something that didn't even involve us at all. But yeah, we managed to successfully dodge that bullet. Early memories, if you mentioned transitioning to the Saints in 1989 and living in that Moorabbin area, I imagine you visited Moorabbin fairly frequently before we left there in 1992. Any early memories of childhood around the animal enclosure or around Moorabbin?
I don't remember the animal enclosure that well. We sat, or stood, should I say, at the South Road end, sort of just across from the goals. And I was pretty young, so I was, I guess, being protected maybe from the animal enclosure. I'm not sure, but I kind of wish I got to spend some time closer there. But watching Plugger kick goal after goal, and do you remember the trumpeter who used to climb up on the sign? That was right near where we would stand, and he'd play the song at the end of the games. And then after a loss, he'd play it, but sadly. So good.
It's funny,
and then I remember,
like in terms of like the musician stuff, because pretty much always through, there's always been someone who plays the song at the end of the game, and even coming to Marvel, I remember even probably. Actually, I don't think I've seen him since COVID, but pre-COVID, there was the guitarist who, before games, would play Classical Gas. Just time after time, just keep playing Classical Gas on his guitar. And then at the end of the game, he'd either play the Saints theme song or he'd play the Saints theme song sad. That were the options. They were the three tunes he knew.
Yeah, because then like a smarter businessman would probably play the winning songs team. Because there's usually plenty of them pretty happy and ready to give them money out. But no, he stayed true, which I appreciated.
So, have you at any point been up on a stage or anything and looked down and gone, hang on, there's one of our guys in the crowd, or had maybe a meeting at a gig somewhere or anything? Or
I was lucky enough during the lockdowns. I did a web series where I interviewed my childhood heroes. So I did an episode with Gazy and Damien Cow from Tism, who's a big Saints supporter as well, and Frankie Peckett, who's like my all-time favourite footballer. And I think you've had him on.
We have, yeah.
Yeah. What a great guy. Anyway, so after that, the next comedy festival, I didn't realise it, but he came to one of the shows. And I don't see who's out in the crowd, the lights in your eyes or whatever. But I always go to the door and say goodbye as they leave. And he came out, and I was like, oh, it's just like, oh my God. I was so glad I didn't know I was in there, because, I wouldn't have been able to keep a straight thought. But, and I said to him, I'm like, like the classic, it's a bit of a flat night, but honestly, thanks so much for coming. And he goes, oh, no, I thought it was was great. I've never been to comedy before, so this is all I think it is. Oh, that's right. That's right, Frankie. I'm comedy.
Was it you, Matt, that told a story at one of your shows about meeting a player and like blurting out something like, "You were my password," or what?
Yeah.
That was you, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Have you had Goxie on
We
before?
haven't had Goxie.
Goxie
I've known him for a while, but we haven't had him
He's
on.
just moved back to Melbourne. He's you should get him on. What a character. But he's he was going to be doing a set at the BNF. Yep. Or Nick, you were telling me it's the F&B. The Saints
No,
one. Is that what you were saying?
the Brownlow's the F&B. The league F&B.
Oh, the Brownlow's the F&B. Sorry. So he was there gonna do a set there, and he brought me along as his +1, and such a sad week that Danny Frawley ended up passing away that week, so they cut Goxie's set, but we still went along, and it was such a emotional night. But walking in, all the players started coming up to Goxie saying, hey, Goxie, how's it going? And I'm standing next to him like the most awkward goofball. So they'd politely turn to me and say, oh, hi, I'm Tim Membry. Hi, Tim, how's it going? Which is, looking back, is so awkward because I'm 10 years older than all of them. But and then Josh Battle came up to me, shook my hand. I said, oh, hi, Josh. He used to be my bank password. And yeah, it was just a real brain fart. And yeah, it was like, it gets blurry, but the next, I sort of opened my eyes and he wasn't there anymore. I'm sure he was like, can't wait to, couldn't leave that convo quick enough.
Kind of know most of that story because myself and Darren were there that night as well. And we're probably only about a table away from yourself and Goxie. And I actually walked over to Goxie because he kind of had that connection. And yeah, he was telling us about how he was meant to be up there and that sort of thing. So you're probably sitting next to him as I was talking to him. So there's
whoa,
yeah, there's the whole. They got shunned again, unfortunately. So
with fame.
So you've had obviously gone along to that night and that sort of thing. What are some other things you might have got? Anything involved with the club at any point? Have you gone to? So you travelled interstate for games. If you go, how far have you gone?
Oh man, maybe I've gone to the SCG for. Was that for a final? No, it wasn't a final, but it was a late season game. Went to New Zealand for the first Wellington game, which was pretty fun until the game, of course. But my best interstate game was. I'm going to muck it up. I forget if it's 04 or 05. I think it's 05. But the 05 qualifying final
against Adelaide.
Against the Crows.
Yeah, was there too.
Oh, man. That was one of the... I think that's probably one of the... It's got to be top 2 or 3. Because obviously prelim wins are maybe better. But that's right up there with the best ever Saints experiences I've had. And my schoolmate used to be the water boy for the team. And so I go, oh, we should catch up for a beer after. He said, yeah, I'm having some beers with the players. Come by to this hotel. And we go and ended up chatting with like Aussie Jones into the night, which looking back, you're like, oh, ideally they'd probably not be at the bar until the middle of the night. But 2 weeks off, they had the week off. They earned it. But yeah, then obviously the Sydney game, which was pretty rough.
Pretty rough indeed, yeah, when we thought...
Why am I bringing that up? I don't know why I'm bringing that up. That was the Goose Maguire punch game, wasn't it?
It was indeed, yeah.
We are sort of broadcasting this as the All-Australian team is happening, and by the time you listen to this, you would already know this, with Callum Wilkie and Jack Sinclair in the team, which is fantastic. Sinclair a second.
That's awesome.
Sinclair a second All-Australian, Wilkie a first. Hopefully they put Big Row in the ruck a bit later on, but we'll find out soon enough. Can you sort of take us through a bit of what you're up to? I understand that one of your podcasts where you delve a bit into history is actually turning its focus towards the Saints. Can you sort of take us through what you're up to?
Yeah, well, this week Nick's joining as a special guest. It'll be out next Wednesday. We record it tomorrow. I'm currently writing. I'm about 8,000 words deep into trying to just summarize the 150-year story.
The script is about 150 pages long because you're typing it into size 54 type font. So
my co-host David Jess teases me about that all the time. My old man eyes needs the very big font, but there's about 3 words a page, I think. But I think I've just got up to the mid 90s, so tonight might be late because I've still got 30 odd years to go. But that's going to be really good. It's funny because the podcast we do go on is the majority of the listeners are overseas, so the St Kilda Football Club doesn't necessarily mean anything to them, but I talk about them so much, especially there's a bit of a running joke if the year 1966 ever comes up, I tell the other two a fun fact that they might not know about a football game from back then. So a lot of people around the world, and I get messages all the time with people from non-football backgrounds in Australia going, you just let me impress this guy at a bar by telling him, oh, yeah, the Saints, the 1966 premiers. Yeah, I know that.
It's amazing. One at a time, just turning one at a time around the world.
Yeah, that's right. There's definitely, I've definitely converted a few international members, a few in England and stuff. Which is pretty wild. But I think this episode this week, Nick, is going to change even more minds.
I hope so. I mean, that's the point, isn't it? That's the point. It's a secret membership drive for the footy club. But tell us about the podcast. Like, what does the podcast do every week?
So basically, there's 3 of us, and we rotate between us each week to see who's going to tell a story. We go back and research a topic, usually suggested by the listeners. And this one in particular, I was just going through we've got a Google form people can fill out, and I think I read 20 odd different people from around the world, including someone from Turkey, has suggested I do a report on the Saints, and which is interesting. But some weeks it'll be a serial killer, or it'll be like about Bigfoot, or it could be about anything. But this week it's going to be about the mighty Saints. I think the first ever report I did was about the history of Aussie rules. So. Okay. Bringing it back to
We're going to teach. I can see the jumper that you're wearing. We're going to teach the world about the yellow peril. Is that in the?
The yellow. Oh, that's good. We should do a section on jumpers. Surely, in your 150th episode, there was a bit of talk about that. But I think this year's probably had the best ever yellow jumper.
Yellow was
and that
good.
might. I've got a soft spot for the yellow peril. To be honest,
I think we all do. Actually, you've got one.
I own one of them.
We smoked Carlton in that jumper one day at Princess Park.
Yes. Take that over the M&M Blues any day.
Absolutely.
So what's probably one of the what's one of the strangest sort of, I guess, incidences or something you've had that's involved the club, where you've travelled or somewhere you've it's just come up in a conversation with someone you're completely not expecting it to, kind of thing, or
I didn't realize I was coming here to be probed like this. Wish I had. You're talking to me like I'm a guy who's some sort of filing cabinet memory. But okay. Look, I don't know if this is anything, but I was in. Remember the International Rules Series in 2006? And it was the brutal one where the Irish were basically saying we're not going to play anymore.
Yeah.
So I was over there for both those games. And it was one of the great trips. We hired a van, and we drove across from Galway to Dublin, Croke Park. And after the Croke Park game, I don't think this answers your question at all, to be honest. But I think after the Galway game, we went to the pub afterwards, and Spud was sitting there with Sauce, if I'm remembering correctly, and it was amazing, like 2 now great Saints men. But it was amazing the difference between how Sauce was just like, he didn't say it, but in his eyes he was saying, piss off, mate. I don't want to talk. Whereas Spud was basically throwing an arm around me going, come in, let's chat. Want to hear all about it. And then at the end of the Dublin game, we got out of a taxi on the way to a nightclub. And no, it was the other way around. We were getting into a taxi, late at night, leaving a nightclub. And jumping out of the taxi was Brendan Goddard and who was he? I think he was there with another Saint. Maybe
it wasn't Michael Hurley,
might have been
in a taxi.
I feel like it was maybe Sam Fisher, but I might be misremembering. It was pretty hazy sort of morning. But then I heard recently that they both maybe hit the town the night before, thinking they weren't getting a game. You heard that? And
yeah, they did.
Yeah, they ended up getting the late call up the next morning, and I don't think Fisher had been to bed yet or something like that. Something that third hand.
Mate, last one from me before I guess we move on. But favourite players, favourite moments. We talked about some finals appearances. Spoke about Frankie Peckett, but any other kind of key things that stick out to you as kind of your moments or your favourite times of being a Saints fan?
I think the Moorabbin days, and the older I get, the more I appreciate that I was able to be there for just those short 3 or 4 years. Just being able to walk down there. We'd walk down. I lived probably a 25-minute walk, 20-minute walk, but the cars were parking over our driveways. The streets were just packed out with supporters, walking through the suburban streets, and it's like an old man being nostalgic, but it's a lot nicer than walking to Marvel Stadium off the train, as nice as that is. And then after the game's going around to our Nana and Pops in Moorabbin with sometimes 50 family members and friends to celebrate or commiserate with Nana's chocolate cake and a few beers. I wasn't having the beers, to be honest, but everyone else was. And that they're probably the best memories. I remember in '97 we all went around and I don't think I really understood how big it was. I was a bit naive then and just thought, this is just a thing that happens. Everyone gets their shot. Thinking it'll
happen again.
Thinking back, that's very naive. But yeah, if not this year, next year. But the aunties and uncles obviously didn't feel that way, and they were, it just felt electric being around them there. The same sort of feeling that started happening in 2004, the streak, which I think finished at Sydney. I remember, I think it was at the same auntie's house when that all
finished
apart.
after the day after tomorrow.
That's right.
Yeah. That was they went to the movies.
Yeah,
is that the one?
Right.
That's so funny. Man, you three remember everything, which I guess is why you're asking me these questions. Like I might as well. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, every finals win is like, I remember beating Collingwood. I think Frankie Peckett maybe even kicked 2 or 3 or 1, but I've extrapolated it in the rain at the MCG. It was the semi-final.
Oh, 8. Actually, that was
8, yeah.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
It was pretty late in his career, and we were throwing him onto the ball, maybe on the wing to start the games. They had Harvey, and they were throwing a few of the veterans in, and leaving the ground, they were playing Rose Tattoos, We Can't Be Beaten. I'm like, man, I just felt like I was walking a foot off the ground. It's such a great feeling. Similar to the Bulldogs prelim wins as well. Just like, holy shit, I can't believe we're going to be there. And then walking from Flinders Street Station to the G on the replay morning, and there was this huge, like, old Cadillac type winged car with the top down, blasting this upbeat jazz version of "Oh When the Saints," and my heart was beating out of my chest. That was the peak of the day, probably. Special mention to Lionel Richie, but it got a bit rough from there.
So on that sort of note, I guess you pretty much probably know the question coming here, that to you, basically, what is the St Kilda Football Club? It's the question we've asked everyone this year. So I guess a word, a moment. What does it mean to you?
Well, I think it's a funny club because as much as I didn't necessarily choose it, but I'm choosing to stick with it, right? And it's easy to do that when you go for Hawthorn or Geelong or nearly any other team in the league, basically. But just to be a Saints supporter, I don't know. It's this sort of perverse thing where I feel the people who stick with the Saints, I think they're the toughest sports fans in the world. We keep hoping, and I hope all the time. It goes away, pretty quickly on some game days, but I'm always topped up with hope again the next week. And I like how I've heard you three talk about this, heard Charlie Clausen talk about this, but it's they're like a family member, the Saints, and we can talk shit about them, but as soon as someone else does, like I read Titus, I love Titus's columns every week, but when he talks about the Saints, I'm like, how dare you? How dare you? Oh yeah, it's strange. He's writing a comedy column about footy, and I'm like, you shut your mouth, mate.
You might be a funny man, but that ain't funny.
But the worst thing also is that it hurts so much because it's generally true as well. That's
yes, of course. That's right.
As I've always said with the Saints, it'd be like having that deadbeat relative that frustrates you, and you're constantly, talking to other family members, going, "This is a pain in the ass. Got to do this. Got to do that. Got to do that." But as soon as somebody outside of the family said, "He's a loser" or whatever, you'd be like, "Oh, hang on a second," and pull them into line and say, "No, totally. You can't be saying that." So, it's very much our domain. But Matt, thank you for stopping by and having a chat. I was wondering, given you are one of us, you can help us out with our Lions review, and we'll just keep things rolling a little bit. You can even start us off if you want. What did you make of it? I felt it was a strange game to watch because for the first time all year, you're watching a game thinking we can't actually miss the 8, but there's still a little bit to play for in that we had home finals on the line, but it was a weird one because you're kind of like, well, if we lose, it's not the end of the world, where every other loss during the season had felt potentially disastrous.
It did. It felt like there were 3 possible results: a win, which would be amazing. And then there was the honourable loss, which it kind of ended up being, and that was what I was basically hoping for. That or better, of course. But there was, even though we didn't have that much to lose, getting flogged would have been a mini disaster, I think. Basically, going into the final, we just had 2 great wins against teams that were recently very good, but are both missing finals this year. This was our chance to show. And, it's all my friends and the media who still are like saying that we're basically not a top 8 team, even though it's like, I don't know how you're making that argument. Like, there's one way of seeing if you're a top 8 team or not, and that's if you're in the top 8.
Yeah.
And we are in that.
And we've been there all year.
So I don't really know how you're making that argument.
We're still 11th.
If we get flogged, then...
We're still 11th on the Fox Footy rankings, though, so...
Yeah, that's right. The power rankings, ridiculous. Yeah. So I think just sticking fat the whole game and never letting, and even kicking that last goal, I thought was, was nice. 2 goals, that's anyone's game territory. Much like we were with the other top 3 teams, the other top 4 teams even. Melbourne's was a little bit of a bigger gap, but that one was different in other ways because of the injuries and we probably outplayed them. But Collingwood a goal, I think, and Port maybe 7 points.
Mm-hmm.
So people say you haven't beaten anyone in the top 4, but we haven't been destroyed by them by any means at the same time.
And Nick, I'll throw it to you. I remember thinking, we got that goal that he mentioned through Membry to get back within 12 points, and I think we took it out of the middle, and Higgins took a mark on 50. And I remember had that weird feeling in my head, thinking, "Fuck, we're going to lose by 5 points." Thinking that's honourable, but that sucks. But obviously we didn't score again from that. But yeah, I think to me it was one of those games where multiple things can be true at once. Where we were lucky to be close at halftime because Brisbane had missed a lot of shots, and that's true. They could have blown it out. But we were much better in the second half, very competitive, took it up to them, and it was a somewhat honourable loss. I think both of those things are true.
Absolutely. And I think you look back over the last few years, and this is one of the things, this is one of the ways that you can tell that we are demonstrably different to the last few years, because I feel like last year, the year before, we go into half time and there are a couple of goals down, but we've been comprehensively outplayed for most of that first half. I know we started fairly brightly. We kicked a couple at the start. We were up and about early. But as soon as they got their hands on the ball, and they did dominate us kind of at the clearances and stoppages, and they got first hands on the ball, they ought to get the ball out and run hard. And they just felt like they just wanted it more throughout I guess, the second half of the first quarter and then the second quarter entirely. But they comprehensively outplayed us. And in previous years, that's a game that we go on to lose by 10 goals, 80 points. You know, you look back at the Bulldogs game a couple of years ago, the Bombers game last year and the year before, like games where we might have been just in it at quarter time or at half time and then just gone out to get absolutely pumped. And we didn't. In fact, we came out and we probably outplayed them for the third quarter and probably should have been even closer at 3/4 time. But, you know, it just wasn't to be. But I think that was one of the pleasing things, is that we never gave in. And even when we were being outplayed, we weren't being thumped. And that was partly Brisbane obviously not taking advantage of their opportunities. But yeah, they're the number one scoring team in the competition. And we kept them to under 80 points, regardless of whether they outplayed us and they missed shots. Like that's still something to maybe be proud of. Is probably too strong, but it's something to say that, hang on, we were competitive and we competed and we made it a contest to one of the best couple of teams in the competition in the final week of the year heading into finals. Like that's something to be positive about. And in a game where, you know, we didn't have a huge amount to lose, aside from the home final, away final thing, you know, that argument, but we competed and we fought our way back into a game against clearly a top 2 or 3 team in the league. And we made it hard for them. And ultimately, I think that's what sets us up for a finals run, is that this is a team built for finals football. And I think that's what we can take out of it. Yes, we would have loved to win, but what we take out of it is that, you know, we competed, we made it a contest, and we came through relatively unscathed outside of Matt, your password's concussion.
Blank password.
Yeah. But the word is he should be fine for the first final.
Yeah. And then Tim Rembury probably had one of his stronger games, which is great timing as well. And it was without Max King, who comes back in. Like it feels like for a loss, it was, you know, it wasn't the worst of them.
No,
and it feels like it doesn't hurt momentum going into the final.
There was a bunch of other positives. I mean, Jack Hayes coming back and playing senior footy for the first time in 440 days or thereabouts. I mean, Mateus Filippo, you know, who had clearly been tiring through the second half of the year, but thrown into the middle and won some clearances. You know, I think he won the second most clearances for us in the game. Rowan Marshall was a beast, obviously, but Filippo had more clearances than Jack Steele, Jack Sinclair, and Brad Crouch, who were our clearance machines. You know, like you said, Matt, Tim Embry kicking some goals, you know, getting back into some form ahead of September. Like there was a lot of positives to take out of this game, despite not winning it ultimately.
Ryan Burns, third quarter, he had 12 coming on as a sub. But another point that I think was true, that Brisbane, when they levelled the scores in the third quarter, it was 6-5 to 5-11. But of their 5 goals, I think there was one where Jay Gresham didn't quite stick a tackle in the first quarter. Then we had Brad Hill turn that ball over in the second quarter when he should have given the handball and got caught. And then Webster slipped over when Cameron turned him inside out. So we probably gave away 3 of the 5 from mistakes that could have been avoided. So there was a chance for our position to be stronger.
Yeah. And Webster not getting goal side at the one that's off the ground from Cameron. And it was a lot of the goals probably came from, as you're saying, small errors we made. And they had lots of opportunities. But that's what pressure also does. Pressure makes you miss too. So there's many Brisbane fans, and like a few Brisbane fans I know were very relieved to get that win. They were concerned that they were actually going to drop it and lose the home final. They came out of it thinking, hey, we've actually escaped one there. That there was a fair bit of at 3/4 time, one message from one Brisbane fan going, you're going to run over top of us here, that they were so concerned about it. And it's just show that, as we're saying, the losses we've had to these teams that we get through week 1, we will come up against in week 2 or week 3, depending how far we can get, that we've only just lost to. We have shown that seems to be the way we're playing this year. We pick up against these top teams and get dragged down by the lower teams. These teams down the bottom drag us down to their level, and we lift against top teams. And I mean, it's a bit of a payoff there. Going fantastic. We turn up against these teams that play great football. We win those couple of other games that we probably should win rather than dropping or just scraping over the line. And hey, we get even higher than what we have finished this year. And it's just shows that, yeah, this whole we're not any good or anything like that is just, as we're saying, it's just rubbish. And yeah, we could turn up and who knows what we could actually do. It'd probably be teams concerned going, hey, we don't want to play them next week. I mean, if we turn up again, if Brisbane lose their first game and all of a sudden we're turning back up there again, they're going, this isn't an easy game. They've probably just been pummeled by Port Adelaide and a bit sore and that sort of thing, and thinking, well, hey, we've only just scraped over against the line 2 weeks ago. Hey, who knows what's going to happen today? So it's that whole situation of, yeah, don't count us out. We could do something crazy, or yeah, I mean, they could all end this week, next week. Who knows? It's just how we've been this year.
It's a really good point about turning up against good teams. And I think we've talked about it a couple of times this year. And I've talked about it in the office with people about how St Kilda teams tend to rise against the quality teams. And I think it's something that, I mean, Darren, you could probably speak to dates and whatever better than anybody, but I feel like it's something that we've done across history, even when we haven't been a particularly good team. I remember like 94, we beat Essendon and they were the premiers. They were the best team in the competition. 95, we were one of the only two teams to beat Carlton on their run, and one of the greatest teams we've ever seen. That 95 Carlton team is that we tend to rise against the quality teams and the best teams, and then we just let it drop against the average teams or everybody else. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, we've probably got a reasonable record of beating eventual premiers or reigning premiers with the Bulldogs and Richmond and various others. Obviously, you'd prefer it.
Geelong last year.
Geelong last year. You'd prefer the narrative to be a little bit different, but it's kind of the way it's gone. We pushed West Coast in 2018 as well. But yeah, there's always been a little bit of that. And I guess my last thought on the game was when we lost to Carlton a couple of weeks ago, it was because they monstered us in clearances, and that happened in this game as well. So obviously that's twice in the last 5 weeks that a good midfield has completely got hold of us. Obviously we smashed Geelong and smashed Richmond in that area, and that's encouraging, and obviously beat a pretty emerging Hawthorn side, but just got to guard against having those lapses and periods within matches. But wrapping a bow around it with votes, now we have changed it this year, Matt, with our obviously 10 that we're dividing around, but I ended up giving 3 votes to our 2 All-Australians in Sinclair and Wilkie. I gave 2 votes to Marshall, who could have or should have been All-Australian. Gave 1 to Brad Crouch, and I actually gave Membry a vote. I mean, statistically, 8 possessions and 3 goals, but I think in terms of what it means for us going forward, it was really significant. But, H, how did you divide your 10?
It was I thought Marshall was probably our best player and just gave everything on the day, and probably if you look at as it stands, he had 9 clearances. That's a huge number. The work he did in the middle, and he was up against good opposition when you look at him as well. And it's the sort of game that if he brings that to the finals and gives us that service, hey, we're right in amongst it early. And I mean, that's the first thing you need. You need the ball coming out the middle. He didn't have a lot of support, as we saw, as you're saying, that generally otherwise we were pretty well beaten in the middle. But if he can just get that bit of support from the usual Crouch and Steele and that, and they start pushing it down the middle as well, we're going to win a lot of the ball. We're going to be hard to stop. And just, if we get that against GWS, he's not going to have as, I guess, experienced ruckman going up against him in that game. So hopefully he can just strangle it and just give us that same service again, because that was huge what he put together. 2 to Sinclair, just worked all day, worked in the middle, worked the back line, worked way up forward even. It was just all over the place. Then gave 1 to Crouch, 1 to Wilkie, just did the same as he does week in, week out. Gave 1 to Zane Cordy. I still reckon his backup work down the back, and there he's stepped in and just their key forwards were kept reasonably quiet. We saw, at times we saw different players on Danaher up forward. You had Hipwood up forward. Neither of them really did a lot, and unfortunately, we got beaten in other positions up forward. So the 2 of them working together were great. And last off, Ryan Burns. He came on and just changed the way we played. He all of a sudden he's popped up and he's absolutely everywhere. You think we may have played a little differently if he'd actually started the game. When you look at it, I don't know whether they didn't realise we'd made a sub and no one went, oh, no one's on him, sort of thing. But he got out there and he moved the ball well. He hit targets. He got to the spots he needed to be, and that sort of performance over a whole game, it would have been almost getting close to a best on ground.
I wanted to give a special mention to Ryan Burns. Didn't quite fit him into the votes, but I think you're right, H, that he's a bit like the Energizer Bunny. Like, he doesn't always hit the target, but those legs are always moving. Like, he's always moving. He's always running. And sometimes I think he probably runs too hard for his own good. Like, sometimes he just needs to either slow down, take that extra step, take a breath, and then kick the ball. But sometimes he's just kind of kicking and he just mistimes it because his legs are just moving so fast, faster than almost his brain works. But I go 4 to Rowan Marshall. Like you said, H, 9 clearances for a ruckman is incredible. And he just does a power of work at ground level. He had 16 contested possessions for the game out of his 20. I had 27 hit outs. He had 24, 25 touches or something like that. He's just a machine. And I think he started to get the credit that he deserves this year, but he's probably still underrated. And I think he was up against someone who is also an underrated ruckman in the competition in the Big O. Oscar McInerney is a legitimately very, very good ruckman. And he was also very good at ground level. He's a good tap ruckman. He's a big body. And Rowan Marshall, at the very least, broke even, but probably beat him around the ground. And it was just another very, very good game. His year has been very good, but his second half of the season has been incredible. And it's good to see him start to get some of the credit around other segments of the media, around fan bases, etc. Because he's been very, very good. I gave 3 votes to Jack Sinclair. We've heard all year about what other teams do with guys like Nick Dacos, and why don't you tag Nick Dacos and all that sort of stuff? And Jack Sinclair is the same. How other teams haven't worked out a way to try and stop Jack Sinclair, because he is so creative when he gets the ball. I wish that we had 2 of him, one across half back and one through the middle, because he can do so much damage when he's forward or center, and his delivery inside 50 is probably best in the team. His ability to weight the ball perfectly to a leading forward, whether it's Max King or Tim Embry or whoever it is, even smaller guys like Higgins and Butler, to be able to weight the ball perfectly so that they can take it lace out in front of their face, is second to none in our team, and probably the best we've had since Robert Harvey, for example. But his ability to win the ball across half back and take a moment to hit a target, across the center, down the wing or whatever, and deliver the ball comfortably and calmly to someone else who's then able to drive us forward is just amazing. And like I said, I wish we had 2 of him, but how other teams haven't worked out that he is such a key part of our squad, our lineup, and the way that we move the ball is incredible. So I gave him 3 votes. I gave.
I'm just like, shh, Nick, shh. Why you don't give anyone any ideas? I'm so paranoid. Who's listening? What if they're bloody listening?
That's okay. You still can't stop him.
No, I know. Obviously, they've tried, but there was a game a couple of weeks ago where they kept him quiet for a patch.
Yeah, I think his quiet game was like
but
24 touches or 25 touches or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, was that was the Carlton game, wasn't it? I think it was the Carlton game. Yeah. I think the way that they stopped him was just winning the ball and then kicking over him, and they'd kick goals. But I gave one vote to Cal Wilkie. I thought Wilkie played a pretty good game. I thought he was caught out in a couple of moments. Danaher kicked 2-3, but if he wasn't such a moron, he probably should have kicked 4-1. And it was just moments that he was just, and that stopped Wilkie from getting another couple of votes. But otherwise, he was very good. I gave one vote to Nazaya Wanganeen-Miller, who I think his year has been incredible, and just kept driving us forward, just kept running, kept pumping it forward and kicking it long, and has just been such a vital part of our identity as a football club over the last kind of 18 or 20 weeks. His ability to grow and develop as a player has been so important for us. And I gave one vote to Mitch Owens, not for your regular reasons, but he had the most tackles of any of our players in the ground, which for a second-year player, we know how damaging he's been moving forward and his ability to take strong marks and pivot out of stoppage and kick goals and all that sort of stuff and run over people. But his defensive ability was on show on Saturday afternoon, and I thought that was a really underrated part of his game and something that we haven't really spoken about a lot. But his contest work, his effort to get to contest and stoppage and make a contest is elite, and I just love the way this kid goes about it, and he's going to be a very, very good player for us, hopefully for a decade or more.
Do you think that, are you still hearing that people talk about our list being hopeless, like quite a poor list? But all these, it feels like this year more than recent years, you're naming quite a big range of players in your votes each week. And I mean, as you said before, Parker, we've got 2 All-Australian players, almost 3. Machito Owens was in the top handful for the Rising Star, and he was named in the 22 under 22 along with Nazaya. And then, there's I feel like we've got quite a bit of quality, but I am obviously a bit one-eyed, but I feel like, Higgins and Butler are one of the better small forward duos in the comp. Marshall in the ruck, Max King. I just don't really understand why people continue with the poor list idea.
Especially when you consider that we are where we are.
Filippo,
we are where we are into the first week of the finals, with Jack Steele probably having the worst year of his career outside of potentially his first 2 at GWS. Certainly his worst footy since coming to St Kilda. And then you've got guys like Brad Crouch, who is a very good player in his own right. And there's a bunch of other very good players, like Mateus Filippo could be anything. There's a bunch of good players on this list, and there is certainly an element of, I think, people underrating these guys, but also overlooking them or comparing them to others and expecting there to be some kind of template of a footballer. And maybe our guys don't necessarily fit the template, but they're very good players in their own right.
I think it's just that polish that I think a lot of people go, we just don't have that golden player sort of thing. We most teams seem to have that one player who just shines, like a Bontempelli or a Cripps or something like that. Just that one golden player. What we don't have. That we've got a whole look. We've got a cabinet full of silver, probably. We just don't have that that top line polish that a lot of the teams
view is they can they can contemplate that whilst Essendon, the Bulldogs, Adelaide and Fremantle are sitting on a beach in Bali. They can talk about that all they like, to be honest, with all the polish that's spoken about on their list when they book their flights. But we'll continue to wrap that with the awards. So we'll preview the Giants final next week. But Jason Blake Awards. Nick, did you want to kick us off with that?
Yeah, it's a tough one because I feel like there's a lot. And I feel like, I don't know, I've kind of just got to go back to the well, given it's the final home and away game. I want to give it to Mason Wood, who I know that he's been getting a bit more credit, and I think it's kind of widely accepted that it's, the best footy of his career and all that sort of stuff. But you look at the job that he's done for us week after week after week after week for a year and a half, really. And he's just not spoken about in the same vein, the same breaths as your top class, elite wingman, where he almost provides us more than most wingmen do because he's bigger, he's stronger, he has the ability to take contested marks and kick goals, which is more than most wingmen do. And then he also drifts back and takes contested marks in defence, and almost goal square to goal square, let alone 50 to 50 like most wingmen. And the guy just never stops. He never stops. We talk about Brad Hill being the running man and other guys just never stop running, but Mason Wood never stops running. And he's 6'3", 6'4"-ish. He's a big boy. He's a big body. He's strong. He's the healthiest he's ever been, obviously. But he has the ability to play so many different roles for us and play them almost playing the one position. We don't line him up at centre half back. We don't line him up at centre half forward to play different roles. We line him up on the wing, and he goes and does all these different things for us week after week. And he's just been massive. And I love Mason Wood. He's one of my favourite players now. And I was really, I liked him when we picked him up as a recruit. I thought he'd be a really good kind of third, fourth foil forward as I guess mid-sized forward type. He's a really good kick for goal. But I remember speaking on this podcast, wondering why we're playing him on the wing. Like, he doesn't have the ability to play on the wing, but he's legitimately one of the best pure wingmen in the competition. And nobody talks about him in that vein. And so Mason Wood has to be my Jason Blake.
He's the perfect Jason Blake as well, I reckon. Because I think of, me and my mates would call Jason Blake, our nickname for him was the Ute. He was the utility. He could play any position. And I mean, Mason Wood plays the one position, but that one position is the whole ground.
Right. That's right. And it feels like that utility that you talk about, Matt, that utility role was something that was almost like players were named as utilities every week. That utility doesn't really exist in modern day AFL footy, but Mason Wood is a utility.
Their footy card would often say it. Like, their footy card would say such and such utility.
I think that's because most of the time the people printing those cards had no idea where they played. So I've got to give it to a bit of a combination. We go back 2 weeks and you look at King, Membry. How well did they work against Geelong? How well did everything just click with both of them out there? And then we see King not play last week. And Membry gave us 3 goals, but I don't think he had anywhere near the impact he had against Geelong the week before. Against Geelong, I felt he was huge in that game. He might not have had a lot of the ball, but everything he did made a difference to what was happening out there. And working in tandem with King was fantastic. And I think that's going to be one of the things we look at this week and go, that is just what we need out there. So I think that combination of those two out there is very underrated, and we've been missing that quite a bit. And as I said, we saw against Geelong just how well it works. Let's hopefully that can be a key going ahead for the rest of the season.
Matt, did you have any you'd like to bring forward?
Well, I think maybe not just from this week, but maybe for most of the year, I've thought of Windhager as being maybe a little bit harshly criticised. I think he started the year with, a few, injuries, relatively significant injuries, and then he was played as a sub, and then he was dropped, and he sort of never really got a good run at it. And I think during that time, I heard a lot of Saints mates talking about him, like, oh, he hasn't come on like we thought he was, the way he was looking last year. But I don't think he really had a great run at it until the second half of the year, where he's building, I think, quite solid form, and he's looking more like the player we were thinking he was going to be last year.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good shout. I think his last 6, 7, 8 weeks, probably since that Richmond game the first time, has been pretty encouraging. Just going to give mine to the guy that we were talking about earlier in Ryan Burns, who came on and had an impact. And look, he's got some limitations as a player, Ryan Burns, but he works hard and he's been pretty consistent when he has played. So there's still a chance for him to play a role in the finals. A lot of that would depend on Seb Ross, you would think. In terms of the Shannon Knoll Award, I'm leaning towards that. There's a couple of guys I could mention, but one that's probably an obvious one. I think he's had a very good year, and I think he's part of a very good combination. But I also feel that in some of these bigger games, he's struggled a little bit, and you always get the feeling he's going to miss important shots at goal, and that's Jack Higgins. Does a lot right, but at this stage, there's probably just not quite the trust that, when it really matters most, are we going to get that from him? So that might be a little bit harsh, but he's mine. Nick?
Combination for me, and I think I've got to go to our clearance machines in the middle, Jack Steele and Brad Crouch. I think, there's been a couple of times this year where they've just been dominated, and you don't expect that from those type of strong, leader type on field clearance beasts. And last week was, again, I think we saw it happen against Carlton in that final quarter when we needed guys to stand up and they didn't. We saw it last week against Brisbane, where Lachie Neale kind of got on top at stoppage. We're going to come up against a pretty good clearance team, a team that's got Tom Green and Callan Ward and Cornelio and these types of guys that can win the footy at will when they want to. We need these guys, in the trenches to win the ball and get first hands on it and be able to get our guys that are, the flashy guys, the smooth movers, whatever you want to call them, out on the wing and through the middle, get them the ball to be able to go and make a difference. And if we can do that, then we're in a really good spot. But it's those two guys, experienced heads, big bodies that really are going to need to lift next week against the GWS midfield that are pretty good in the middle.
Matt, did you have one?
Maybe take a leaf out of your book from last week or the week before, Parker, where you talked about the certain supporters bringing the opposition mates. I think leading into our first Melbourne final, our first MCG final in 13 years, first Melbourne final in 12 years, we're playing against a team that's not going to bring too many supporters. We've got no excuses not to be dominating the crowd. And we've got 50,000+ members. I'd be pretty shattered if we don't have 65,000+ there for the elimination final, and why not even more than that? So rather than bringing your opposition supporting mates, bring your, your half-ass Saints supporting mates. And I think there's no excuse not for turning out to this on a Saturday afternoon.
Agreed.
There's probably some excuses if you've got a newborn child or something like that, Parko. Maybe I'll give you a pass. But
I've got my ticket on there. Don't worry.
Or bring those, or bring your mates that do barrack for other teams. We get them to support us on the day. That's
put a scarf on them, put the colours on.
Yep.
But it's very rare that you would get that level of dominance in a crowd our way in a final. So H.
I've got a couple of guy up till the Hawthorn game had been massive in our back line. It's just been the last few weeks he's just had a bit of a lull and it's just been beaten, probably a little bit too easy at times. But Jimmy Webster, hopefully you can get back to where you were, because huge going up until, as I said, the Hawthorn game where he's had 6 kicked on him, and keeps Cameron, the first time we played him, to a goal on the final siren, and other small forwards goalless and
Killed Cosy
conceding maybe one goal here or there. But yeah, just the last few weeks has just struggled that little bit. And let's hope he can just find that, because he may have the role of Toby Green coming up in 2 weeks. Let's hope he finds it and just buries him into the MCG turf.
Yeah.
The All-Australian captain.
Yeah, he was named that. Not hugely surprising, but we know that he's going to be a large focus of what we're trying to prepare for next week. In terms of that, so St Kilda, I'm almost prepared to, given it's a final, do we park that this week, or is there one that stands out, or do we hang off on it, given that
it's just the whole
normally been so exactly
the whole roller coaster we went through last week of
probably
we're in Sydney 1 minute, we're in Melbourne the next, and
the live ladder.
It should have been safe, but because of Essendon's incompetence the week before, it wasn't. But
what do you think of the final round being set up like that? It's manipulated by the AFL pretty late in the season, so they can choose the game to be last, which is a great position to be in, because when you're playing earlier, the teams, all of a sudden, all the teams that we're relying on to win, they don't have anything to play for. Mm-hmm. We were lucky the Demons showed up, really.
Oh, yeah. It's why it was a miracle the Bulldogs lost the week before. Like, it was starting to look grimmer and grimmer with all of that. As we wrap things up, obviously, AFLW will kick off on Friday night. Pretty tough start against North in Tassie, but you never know. Obviously, great to have that all started. We'll give that a fair bit of oxygen as we head along, and we'll wrap that up next week as part of the finals wash. We do have some listener questions, a few that I'll read out, but maybe we'll park those for next week as a bit of a teaser. Josh says midfield lineup, Owens or Pooh featuring. That's one we can look at. Tim says Hayes or Sharman. I can argue either way. Neither is wrong, neither is right. We might touch on that as well. And Luke says, first of all, thanks for the info, laughs and analysis. No worries. And says, who goes to Green in the final, and is Ross worth the risk coming off a hammy? They're probably all ones that we can take a look at next week. But Steve asks a question. Tell us about your first and most recent Saints finals experience. First final I went to was actually the 97 qualifying final against Brisbane at Waverley. But I do remember the prelim from that series, catching the train down. It was absolutely pissing down with rain all day. And everybody saying that was going to suit North. MCG, Friday night, they were the specialists, and it was wet. And I remember the skies just completely cleared at about 7 o'clock, maybe 45 minutes before the game. And it did not rain the whole way through. And it kind of felt like that was one of the rare occasions where the gods had smiled on us and said, "No, you're okay." They didn't smile on us a week later, but it kind of felt that way. But H, what was your earliest finals experience?
I went to a few finals before that, not involving us, but that final against Brisbane at Waverley was my first St Kilda final as well, and haven't got time for it now, but there's a few interesting stories about the preliminary final that night too, and the whole thing of basically ended up being I was 13 at the time, and pretty much sat there by myself watching the game because of an injury to a family member. So it was an interesting night for us, and we, as you know, we had a few more finals that's the following year as well, but then we had to wait until 2004 again. So it's few and far between at times, but as just like you, 97 was the first one I got to.
I was at the Geelong final 91, but I have no recollection of it. I was 6. The first real final I remember is the same as you guys, the Brisbane game at Waverley, which I think, for pretty much anyone of our kind of generation is going to be the one that you kind of remember being at, home final, all that sort of stuff, and then obviously leading into the North prelim and the grand final for obvious reasons. Matt, your earliest finals memories?
Same as you. I was there at 91. I have vague memories of it, sitting on the wing, and obviously it being a heartbreaker. And then I couldn't get a ticket. Family couldn't get me a ticket for the following year, so I missed the win against Collingwood, but was there for us getting flogged by the Dogs. But I do remember, I was there for all three of the 97 finals. And, obviously Everett going down, I think in the first quarter was so decisive maybe for that final series in general. And Vidovic the week before, is that right?
Against Port in the last quarter.
I mean, that's so St Kilda.
Yeah.
It is.
It is. And then obviously they were able to double team Stewart Lowe in the grand final, and away it went from there. But and obviously the most recent would have been the COVID finals, unfortunately. So that's why this one is great. Shay, again, talking about the positivity and talking about whether we do a press red for red type situation. I would absolutely love that. Logistically, we might have to work on that. That might be a futures project, but wouldn't mind certainly doing something like that. And Steve making the good point about our midfield getting dictated a bit by Brisbane, and Phil Deladakis just on Dan Butler. Of course, Phil co-hosted this show on the odd occasion, asking about whether Dan Butler was stiff not to be in the All-Australian squad. He has had a pretty good year. Obviously, there's the crop of forwards is quite deep, and Charlie Cameron sort of monopolises the best forward in terms of small forward in the game. And then obviously Toby Green plays small to medium, and then they've got all the tools like Larkey and Curnow and Tex. So it was always going to be difficult, particularly with guys like Petrarca, that they'd want to play forward. So, he's had a good year
since 2020, I reckon, Dan. Butler,
without a doubt.
I think he led forward 50 tackles, for the comp.
Yep.
It was weird to have a message from Phil that didn't snipe you there, Nick, as well.
Thank you. That's on record. It is normally Phil that snipes me first. I know there's been a bit of back and forth on the show occasionally, but it is normally Phil that snipes first. So it's good to have that on record.
Well, this early juncture, I'm surprisingly, maybe naively confident about next week. Obviously, as we draw a little bit closer, that'll change a little bit. But it feels all right at this stage. The nerves will kick in probably next week. But it's fantastic to be in that position to be talking about it. We will preview the Giants final, which is, of course, a Saturday afternoon at 3:20. Hopefully, all of the members got their tickets today. Reports are that there's been about 50,000 sold. We hope that's true and that they can go beyond that. And the MCC and the AFL members and the like all show up. But Matt, thanks for jumping on. Good luck with everything that you're doing, and Matt Stewart Comedy, of course, if people want to follow it. But appreciate you coming by.
Check out the Do Go On episode. It'll be out on Wednesday with Nick, and we're going to go through the whole 150 years. I'm predicting maybe a 3-hour episode, but I'm stoked to hear, Parker, that you're feeling good about next week, because I think you're a great barometer. I think you tend to be tuned into the club really well, and when you're confident, we tend to win. So,
well, I hopefully it in the last couple of years, at times it's changed where it's been there and then it's gone away or it's come back. So I'm just hoping this one sticks around. But at this stage, it does feel okay. But we'll share that podcast via our channels as well. But look forward to previewing that final next week, and go Saints.